He was a teacher, he was a banker, he was a business owner, a socialite and friend with connections. He was a philanthropist, a multimillionaire, a money launderer. He was cunning, he was a schemer, he was a criminal. And he was not just a criminal, but an international one. And not just an international criminal, but a trafficker and a predator as well. And above all these things, he was a system. A system which moved effortlessly through the highest levels of wealth, politics, academia, and power, while committing crimes that many of us still struggle to fully comprehend.
Epstein, the cloning, the transhumanism, I think that law enforcement, if law enforcement ever took this seriously, could dig there and would find out.
This is a story that's not about rumors or spectacle. This is about documented abuse, institutional failures, geopolitical blackmail, and political advantage. Seemingly endless unanswered questions remain long after his death. Not only is this podcast about accountability, justice, and the truth that appears to be so blatantly silenced, this is the uncomfortable reality of how power can shield the worst behavior until it no longer can. When are we going to believe victims?
He had the security cameras everywhere, all over the place.
Transparency is bull because it's political.
So much of the Epstein stuff is like he's just openly boasting about it.
He seemed like a guy that would be like, I won't let the system beat me. I own the system. I am the system.
Yeah.
You know? This man is Jeffrey Epstein. In these next 3 episodes, me and my friend Dan will be doing a deep dive into not just who he was as a person, but who he controlled, who he influenced, and the system that was created so he could flourish. This is the Epstein Files, and this is Down the Rabbit Hole. Really quickly also, guys, if you're new here, please subscribe if you can. Moves mountains and does wonders for me. If you're already subbed, if you could share this to someone you know, or if you could even add it to your watch later playlist. I know it's a lot of information. It's probably not digestible in one sitting, so that would be great. And once again, the algorithm helps me so much. Also, really quickly, viewer discretion is advised. As most of you know with Epstein, there's a lot of dark stuff that we cover, and we get pretty in detail, and it could be triggering to some people. So I just wanted to lay that out there, is that we're trying to be objective and as factual as we can, but in order of going down the rabbit hole, we got to cover some pretty dark things. So have that at the front of your mind as we go through this stuff. Besides that, guys, thank you so much. This is part 1 out of 3. 2 and 3 will be out in the next month. Thanks. What's up, guys? This is The Last House on the Left. This is where I chop it up with my friends, kill time, and speak what's on my mind. This is the 3rd installment of my limited series, Down the Rabbit Hole. Dan, Scott, welcome back, bro. How we doing?
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, we're matching today, dude. We're matching.
That was unintentional. We both just wore the blue flannels.
Yeah. And so, guys, just as you saw on the title of this, we are covering the Epstein Files. This is a spider web and a huge conglomeration, network, conspiracy, all these different things that we're going to be going through today. Actually, we're sitting down and we're going to actually break this up into a couple different parts because there's so much that we have to get into. I remember I was sharing the outline with Dan, and actually on our previous series on 9/11, I think I had 11 or 12 pages of notes.
Yeah.
And when I'm like, hey, Dan, just briefly look at this outline real quick, and it was like 26 pages or something.
Well, it's 3 outlines. So
yeah, right.
So
right.
It's a big project. And, I don't feel good for Ben, who's had to read about this. It's just so awful.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. I wanted to mention right before we get into everything, guys, is that I was actually afraid to cover Epstein because I feel like I couldn't do it justice. Like, in one way, I look at myself as like, oh, I'm uneducated. I don't know like how the money works, the transferring of, funds, like all these different relationships we had, which is obviously we are going to talk about that. And I think a big question or a big side of diving into this subject is that ask questions like rhetorically to ourselves and to you guys listening as we go along, because the asking the questions is really going to help give us a lot of, it's going to keep our heads a little sane. But originally, when I was thinking of doing this, because, this series Down the Rabbit Hole, it's a very common phrase now in podcasting. Of course, conspiracies. I call this forbidden history a lot of times, because when it came to 9/11 and even JFK, I always like to try. I'm going to try to do my best, and obviously Dan as well, to present as many facts as we can and as many narratives, and hand it over to you guys to see what you guys think and for how you would digest this. But I would say, once again, the textbook definition. Could you look this up on your phone, Dan? I thought I had it in my notes.
Sure.
But look up the textbook definition of a conspiracy, because this is one of the current conspiracies in the media and in the world and in society where this is an actual definition of a conspiracy. I mentioned this a couple during our first episode on JFK, where I go, this is actually a conspiracy, man.
Yeah, no, because even just 10 years ago, told me of the idea of an elite ring of pedophiles.
Yeah.
Including presidents and Bill Gates and
billionaires.
It's the kind of thing that would have kind of seemed like a conspiracy, but
absolutely, because you hear everyone thinks of who are popular conspiracy theorists. People would say Ian Carroll and Candace Owens lately, but then you go all the way back to Alex Jones. We'll actually reference a couple stuff about Alex Jones today. I know that's some people are you're already talking about Alex Jones and you're 2 minutes into the podcast, but could you read the definition of a conspiracy?
Yeah, just the act of secretly plotting together or the secret agreement itself to do something illegal or harmful.
Right.
Merriam-Webster.
So it's that is the absolute, it fits in perfectly. And there's parts of the Epstein network or the Epstein files where just because it fits or it sounds good or it feels good politically doesn't always mean it's going to fit.
Yeah.
And once again, we'll get to these other bigger questions like corruption in America and in the world and whatnot. But it is true, Epstein was doing atrocious things, but also he was able to get away with so much, which is, it's very, that's the very cliche way to look at it. But I'm going to do my best, guys, to really I think this is the most research that I've ever done for one of these rabbit holes. I hope you guys will like it. I hope you're excited. But there's a lot to get to. So I guess let's just jump in, Dan. Do you have any other thoughts yourself on Epstein and your perceptions throughout the years and all that?
Let's get into it and yeah.
We'll go along the way, I'm sure, because there's going to be a lot of
so much. It's hard to even.
I don't even know how we're gonna. We'll see how long these episodes actually last, but we're gonna do 3 of them, and we're filming 2 today, and 1 probably next week. You guys will probably be seeing this probably around mid-February or so. We'll see. Like I said, doing all the research, and I'm trying to give as much we'll show you stuff on the monitor as well, some videos, obviously a lot of photos.
Yeah.
But I really want to give a visual representation of it. And obviously me and Dan aren't journalists. We're not, lawyers. We aren't part of we're not FBI investigators. Once again, a lot of people have a lot of different stuff on Epstein. But
just for the scope of this episode, there's a lot of stuff that's happened just in the last 3 months.
Yeah, exactly.
With the release of files that we are going to talk about, but for this episode, we're focusing early life, basically, just a catch-up.
Absolutely. So we're just going to jump in, guys. Once again, please share, subscribe. This is the first podcast I'm probably going to release of 2026, give or take. So welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole. If you want to let me know about future subjects you would want me to cover. I know some people have already mentioned some stuff like the moon landing. We talked, I think, on one of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of, I think this was probably, we were talking about God, governmental power, I was wrapping up some JFK stuff, and it was one of those things where the moon landing, we also talked about referencing, hey, well, what if we even covered like MLK and Marilyn Monroe and those. I mean, there's so many other things. Like, I would love to, if I was smart enough, I would go into like Iran Contra. Once again, MK Ultra as well. A little bit of a fraudulent slip there. But I just want to say one more thing, guys, before we jump into, is that I was afraid to do this because I didn't think I could do it justice. But with all the research that I've done, the back and forth I've had with Dan, a lot of other people, I feel very confident that we can cover this in a pretty in-depth way. So let's just jump in, all right?
All right, let's go.
Sounds good. So one of the things we always do in these down the rabbit hole episodes is we always try to like source as best we can. Obviously, there are points where there is conjecture, there is like assuming things and narratives and like forbidden timelines and all that stuff. But so as for like the credible sources on Epstein, some of the just incredible journalism from a couple of these people, I would say really it starts off with Julie K. Brown. She was with the Miami Herald that really started to break some of this stuff. There's also people online too as well. So I guess I should also mention, besides Julie K. Brown, there's also what was her name? I would say, Vicky Ward, right? Vicky Ward from Vanity Fair. So these two women, I should say, are the main two people who have been really on this for a while. And then there's a ton of other people recently now that I would say there's a lot of people, like once again, James O'Keefe I had in here. There's this incredible woman, Whitney Webb, that has this book called One Nation Under Blackmail. It's 2 volumes. But the undertitle of this book that she wrote is called The Sordid Union of Americans, like America's government. And it's just the amount people always say like how dense it is and how she just has like fact after fact coming out. But these are like 2 different volumes. The first volume talks about like the relationship between like American government and like backdoor deals with like criminal enterprises like the mafia and stuff like that. And it really gives you a whole nother picture of how the world really works. And then, but basically it sets up how like the government could be, what's the word? Indebted to a person like Epstein. I didn't say that great, but do you know what I'm saying? Like they built this system was built in order that like someone like him could eventually thrive in. Not saying it was built for him, but it was built up enough that he could use it for his own advantages.
Yeah, and there are lots of benefits for certain people to have the kind of blackmail he was collecting.
Yep.
So
absolutely, man.
They were just willing to turn a blind eye, which we'll see as we go along, some instances in which blind eyes were definitely turned.
Right. And you're going to hear like stuff like, oh, Epstein was untouchable. He was, almost a ghost in a way. So other people that I think personally do great work on this is Glenn Prager. He is someone that worked through, we're going to mention him and some things he found out about Epstein or claims later on. There's Michael Wolff. There's Nick Bryan. Nick Bryan has gone on a lot of the popular podcasts like Sean Ryan, Patrick Bet-David, all these big shows. James O'Keefe. There's this philosopher Jason Giorgiani, who in part 3 we're gonna go down, like really jump down the rabbit hole. I know we're kind of repeating that phrase a lot, but mentioning some parts of Epstein's like basically interests, and whether it comes to like his interest in really f***ed up art,
yeah,
to say the least, or just his even like scientific like research and stuff, which people don't really realize, like
all the eugenics stuff he was interested in.
Yeah, and
creepy.
Absolutely. And I'll mention this probably later as well, but a lot of people like Whitney Webb argue that Jeffrey Epstein was just as much of a financial criminal than like a sex offender. Like it's really 50-50, which is like, it sounds very what's the word, coarse and not insensitive to like all the victims and whatever, but I think it gives like, I think she's trying to come at it from a very objective point of view when you look at, because once again, as we're going to be talking about this, like Epstein's reach, it was like this is literally like
he's a guy who like his fortune is entirely unexplainable through legitimate means.
We'll try to connect a couple dots, but also like there's only so much connecting you can do. And So it's just absolutely insane. So if anyone wants to like look at like want to see more like visual types of series, like obviously the Jeffrey Epstein Filthy Rich series on Netflix, they have one that's specifically Filthy Rich, Jeffrey Epstein, and then they did a Filthy Rich on Ghislaine Maxwell. For the beginning of this episode, guys, we're not going to talk as much about Ghislaine. We will talk about the Maxwells in depth in part 2, and as we get to that, your mind starts to be like, "What's happening?" Like,
Yeah.
This information is overwhelming. That's why I was really afraid to do it justice, because I'm like, how much am I going to like leave out? And I'm not going to be able to get everything, but I think to make it like as digestible as possible, I think we got probably 80% of like stuff going on, overall. So excited to do this with you, Dan. This is a big thing that we're taking on. So
Yeah.
after this, you don't have to do a podcast until who knows? Maybe we'll do a Bunker Boys when we invade Iran again. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Wherever we invade next, Greenland or
Yeah. So anyways, guys. Once again, so for all those, there's also a couple other series too. You'd think there'd actually be. I think there's so much reporting and journalism on all this stuff. There's not as many series as you would actually think there is on Jeffrey Epstein. There's another one called Surviving Jeffrey Epstein, which talks about more of the bigger. So, Filthy Rich talks about a lot of the stuff going on in Florida. Once again, this is going to reference like all the farmers, Courtney Wild, people like that. But Surviving Jeffrey Epstein has like a ton of other victims that I wasn't even aware of at the time. But they're both short series, so it's like anywhere from like around like 4 or 5 episodes, something like that. Once again, and then so for books, Julie K. Brown, she wrote Perversion of Justice. These are like the books to go to. Once again, I think if you want like deep historical context that will make you question everything about like America and whatever, like One Nation Under Blackmail, the first volume once again just talks about it's more like the history behind it, and then the second one is specifically on Epstein. Still a huge deep dive, but once again, there's a Nobody's Girl, which is Virginia Giuffre, who just recently passed away. Her memoir, which is absolutely shocking. I didn't read the whole thing, but I've read excerpts of it, seen a lot of people covering it. There's The Spider by Barry Levine, and then there's Relentless Pursuit, which is by one of the main Epstein victim lawyers, Brad Edwards, and this guy's a freaking stud, man. Like, I don't know if you've seen like any of the other documentaries, but he's interviewed a lot in them, and he just imagine the amount of it gets exhausting. I guess we can get into this now really quickly, but in researching this, you get like, how you watch like a bad horror movie, like we've talked about horror in the past, and then you're like, oh, I need to like take a shower, like I'm so like either scarred or I'm messed up or I'm a little disturbed by this. Imagine like being a lawyer, and then you're going through all these statements, you're interviewing all these victims, you're constantly being interviewed by the media and stuff. And think about the women. Like, one thing to notice as well as we get into this is like the victims, and like basically as they have to retell their experiences, and thank God, like I'm very, very lucky, I've never been abused myself, but sometimes like even talking about this, like as a woman, is just incredibly, there's just no real words for it. Like, you can be like, yeah, it's disturbing, or it's very traumatizing, but there's not really a lot of good words to explain the emotions that they sense just trying to relive all this stuff.
Yeah, it's just I don't know, it's totally depraved, and it's upsetting, because you come to realize how many people had to know, how many people had to be protecting him the whole time.
Exactly.
And it's not like there's ever any doubt in anyone's mind that he was guilty.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, so there's a lot to get to. So, also, one last thing, too, is, I know I keep saying one last thing, but I wanted to shout out a lot of politicians that are actually, not a lot, there's a small amount, but they're making a lot of noise, I would say. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Ro Khanna, there's also Thomas Massey, people like Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, I think her name is, and these are people that are going and meeting with the victims and really putting out their story, because once again, like, a lot of these women handled this stuff. This was like 10, 20, 30 years ago, and really not even 10 years ago. A lot of the stuff that we actually can cover right now, we're starting to learn, actually, like I said, through these people breaking points and like these other like incredible online journalists. Like we're learning a lot more about currently right now, like stuff happening in the 80s, but a lot of the stuff that we're going to be covering is kind of more like 90s, early 2000s. But from up until like 2019 when he gets indicted, from like 2009 when he gets out of the sweetheart deal, we don't really know a lot that happened there.
Yeah.
So yeah, guys, I just want to once again to cover our own asses in a way. Like, we want to be responsible with the research and what we talk about. Like, we obviously want to be respectful to the victims and everything. And it's interesting because depending upon certain people that I've mentioned this to have asked me what's the next series going to be or what's the next podcast, I've mentioned this. And some people will propose to me this question of, well, why do you really want to keep, like, this has been so terrible to a lot of these victims, why do you want to keep bringing it up? And it's interesting because if you think about it from that perspective, like, their intentions are good in asking that, like, and it's really all up to the victims and whatnot. But then, you know, if you look at it from the normal, I know it's easy to, you know, what's the word, Monday morning quarterback or whatever, and claim that we know better than the victims and we need to, you know, accountability till no one's, till no one's in, you know, no bad people are in office anymore, which will never happen.
Yeah, no.
But
no, I do think it is a very important thing to talk about, though. I think, well, we're not going to get into Trump till later, but there are a lot of people who want people to forget about it and who don't want people to keep talking about it. And the actions are in the past, but the litigation over it is still actively something that's happening right now.
Yeah.
All of the files are supposed to be released right now, but less than 1% of them actually are. So it's an active situation that I feel like people should know about and be demanding answers about.
Absolutely. And because it's tough, because when you talk to certain people, you sound like a conspiracy theorist. You sound like your head's in the clouds and that everyone's a pedophile. No, but there is a sordid union, as Whitney Webb said, you know, in her, literally in the subtitle of her books about like what's going on here. So some important stats, guys, to like realize as we're going into this about abuse in America. I thought this was would be really helpful just to give more of a framework of how really jacked up America in 2025 is, which is, once again, we're talking about like the 90s and early 2000s and 80s. It's really, Epstein probably really started in the 80s when he started abusing people. But I just want to list off a couple stats, guys. You know, so like 1 in 3 women are victims of sexual assault at some point in their lifetime. Just imagine that. That's like 33%.
Yeah.
And it's 1 in 6 men even. So it's just, it's crushing, man. You know, and only 5% of these assaults upon women are ever reported.
Yeah. It's just crazy. I don't know. I mean, and it's even worse when you think about the fact that this is the better version of America than like back in the day.
The clean version, right?
Yeah. When, you know, you could just beat your wife and that was considered an acceptable social thing to do.
Yeah.
So this is like, I don't know. This is the better version of society.
Supposedly. Right? Yeah, and so, you know, a sexual assault happens in America like every 73 seconds. 73 seconds, man. And, you know, 9 out of these 10 assaults in America are women. You know, it just, you know, the stats are just absolutely shocking. And then you sound like, you know, once again, is the world hopeless and whatever and completely corrupt and just a cesspool and God's left us? Stay tuned to hear our thoughts.
Find out in part 3.
Yeah. But, dude, even listen to some of this stuff, man. Like 80% of female victims experience these assaults before the age of 25. And so I'm getting, also too, guys, if you're curious where I'm getting these stats from, this is directly from the National Sexual Violence and Research Center. So, you know, and even once going over to trafficking, right, the average person from that gets trafficked is between 13 and 15 years old. And, you know, we could talk about the consumption of like porn and, you know, how sex is just a huge part of our culture in America. It's just sex is rampant and it sells. You know, speaking of sex selling, right? Here it is. Sex trafficking is $100 to $150 billion enterprise annually. You know, and I said this, every minute, basically, someone is assaulted, like every, 73 seconds, and a child every 9 minutes. So we're also, obviously, guys, like, viewer discretion advised. I'm laughing because it's, awful and terrible, but we'll do our best to, like, there's a couple words, like, through the algorithm that'll catch on to it. So we'll try to limit that when we can. But once again, there's a lot of stuff this is the darkest subject we could ever cover. Dan, really quickly, this is something right here. Just about, once again, some quick facts about sexual abuse offenders. 93.6% of sexual abuse offenders were men. I mean, obviously, their average age was 38 years. And you think about it, I think Jeffrey Epstein comes to Bear Stearns in like in his early 20s.
Yeah.
And then he leaves and starts his own place around 30 and average age 38 years old, right? And just, if anyone's curious about these stats, you can just go look them up online. But even look at this, 8.5% of sexual abuse offenders were convicted at trial compared to 1.6% of all other federal offenders. It's just mind-blowing, dude. So, anyways, I just wanted to, it's always, charts are always nice, right, to have and look at, but just for a little bit more context, So, and really quickly, like, we say that, like, Jeffrey Epstein and his, trafficking empire was, one of, arguably, I think he's probably the worst pedophile, like, ever known to man. But, think about, like, people, like, in England, like, England had their, had Jimmy Savile, and then America, we have, where do you start, dude? Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, Keith Raniere from Nexium, R. Kelly, Diddy. I don't want to talk about Diddy overall because that's something I'm not interested. Because, like, with Diddy, for me personally, I've said this before in the podcast. It's like, yeah, he was a rapper that was, sexual deviant.
Yeah,
and you can say that about Jeffrey Epstein, but when you really learn about him,
yeah, a lot of these people were just awful sexual predators, and that's like, I don't know. I guess it's worth it to know, but I feel like the reason the Epstein thing is specifically so important is just because of how protected he was and how many people are involved who otherwise, and still to this day, aren't facing any kind of consequences.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Because, like, R. Kelly went to trial, Bill Cosby went to jail. So at the very least, you can argue that there was justice. And we'll talk about Ghislaine Maxwell's jail later. But
we will. We absolutely will.
That's basically not even jail. That's not justice.
Yeah, and, like, I hate to add to the pile, Dan, but there's a couple new things, like, I was learning through here. There's this banned historical documentary that's on YouTube, which I know it can sound like, hey, well, just because, like, I watched this documentary doesn't mean it's true, but there was this other pedophile ring that was in Nebraska called the Franklin Scandal, and it was covered up. There was this guy, Larry King, who was a Republican, and this is one thing that was swept under the radar. And if you ever look into it, I can send you the document. Well, we'll probably want a breath of fresh air for a while, but there's a couple big ones that were as crazy as this one, the Franklin Scandal in Nebraska. Maybe I'll hit at some point in the future, but it's like the details are so crazy, and you're having people die mysterious deaths that are investigating it. This is something like nobody knew about this. It's like very much under the radar, and there was also a crazy one, a pedophile ring in, I think it was Denmark or Belgium, where it was under this guy, Marc Dutroux, and it's just the same thing, like these higher elites. And we're going to do our best, guys. I know it's, you obviously hear with Epstein, the deep state, the elites. We're going to name a lot of the elites here. And sometimes people will be like, well, yeah, Ben, it's possible that, like, this billion, well, there's pretty good evidence now. And we're going to go through a lot of pictures and all this other stuff. So early adulthood, Dan, do you want to cover at the beginning of Epstein's adulthood, and we'll just kind of go back and forth?
All right. So he was a high school or college dropout, right?
Yeah. Born in 53.
Born in 53, New York. He was just middle class, average wealth, not anywhere near the kind of wealth he came into later.
Right.
We'll kind of go over. We don't exactly know, but we have some good ideas where he got that money.
Yeah. Yeah, like mom was a school aide, like a substitute teacher. Dad was a groundskeeper.
Yeah, but really there wasn't anything that unusual about his childhood, as far as I know, that we know about.
Yeah, which is the weird thing.
Yeah.
Right? You would think about, hurt people. But it's like, what got the ball rolling, man?
Yeah.
You know?
So anyway, 74, he gets a job as a math teacher at the Dalton school, which is an elite school, which is kind of interesting to think about. If he's a dropout, how did he get that job? I don't know. You have to kind of believe that he must have been charismatic and really good with people. And
absolutely.
He could have just, I don't know.
And that's the thing. Even like as a kid, like you look at his upbringing and he's like a shy, like very polite, like chubby kid. Like he was known as like a math whiz. Like he played piano, all this stuff. So there's really no red flags in his childhood at all. Yeah. That's what I had, known as a slightly chubby guy, smiley kid, Yeah. And then, like I said, he drops out and never gets a degree.
So you wanted to talk about Donald Barr, I think?
Yeah.
Who's the head of the Dalton school?
Yeah, so basically, he graduates high school earlier at 16. And then he ends up going to this place called the Dalton school. And the Dalton school is literally where they'll have, these kids of, bankers and all these well-off people to go there. So Epstein becomes a teacher, right? And so he's teaching, what did I have that he was teaching here? I think he was teaching some type of like math or, I think it was physics, excuse me. Jeez. Sorry, that was the Coke Zero. And there's no way like for him that he should have gotten in here. Obviously he also before this, like he worked as a tutor as well. And when he's at Dalton, he's known as this guy that's very friendly. He's very sociable. Once again, this is when like becoming charismatic with people. But then he's doing stuff where like he's trying to party with kids. Like
yeah, he's showing up to the parties of all the just high schoolers. And
yeah, like this is where he starts getting known as like being overly friendly to people. It's like
yeah.
Oh my gosh, man. And so I cut you off a second ago. You were saying you were going to say about the headmaster of the Dalton school, Donald Barr.
Yeah, so he was former CIA at the time.
Yeah.
So if you want to look for maybe potentially first connections to the United States government.
Right. Absolutely. And this is a thing where I want to be clear and very careful in a way where you can say, oh, this person was in the CIA, like,
yeah,
that means they're absolutely terrible. It's like, no. But I think it's been known and confirmed that Donald Barr were actually looking to recruit like kids out of the Dalton school into the CIA. And I think when it comes to Donald Barr himself, his son Bill Barr comes into play, at the time. And once again, Donald Barr was known for when he would hire people onto as headmasters or as teachers. He was known for being like pretty. If he just liked you, he would just have you come on. There wasn't as much of a vetting process. But then you think about like this is like a really anal school with uniforms and like this is the 70s, and stuff going on at the time, So, but it's definitely possible that with Donald Barr being CIA, what you hear a lot in the media now is that Donald Barr wrote this book called Space Relations.
Right.
And so you see this book, Space Relations, like it's in Epstein's, a couple of his mansions. We'll get to his properties soon. But this book, I don't know how else to put it because this sounds conspiracy brain, guys. But this book, Space Relations, is about like intercontinental like space pirates that are like doing human trafficking. And there's like, I don't know specifically, like I've heard varying reports on is there actual group like sex or rape in the book, but it's definitely, it's whether or not maybe it's not the actual, and this could be, I'm calling myself out a little bit, I could have maybe read a couple chapters or get your hands on it, but it's actually kind of hard to find this book now.
Yeah.
And really quickly too, but it was like framed in the Dalton library, like encased in glass. Like many people that have been there, like teachers, like confirmed this book.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's what you're most proud of.
Right. And it just, I had this written down that there's one of these characters in this book, Lady Morgan Sidney. She's a sadist, and she's responsible of trafficking these underage kids to whatever various star systems or whatever the book says. And so this is your headmaster, and this is in the library, and this guy's in the intelligence agencies. So once again, we'll probably have to talk about blackmail as we go through all this stuff. If you really like go and look online and be like blackmail in America, like you have to really, it's not like here's the Google AI summary. There's a couple times where that's actually helps us out in our research as we're going through today, but it's very much not the case with
yeah, there's going to be a lot
blackmail,
of stuff where you kind of have to say like we don't know exactly if this guy's connected, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that a lot of these people were. You're never going to get a solid answer unless they actually release all of the files unredacted. But
right. And so Epstein, he gets basically fired 2 years after being here for like poor performance and duties, and people were probably catching on that he was like, he
didn't know what he was doing.
Oh my God, man. So in 1976 to like 81, this is when he starts to go to Bear Stearns. So the way he got into Bear Stearns was he established a relationship with Alan Greenberg, the CEO, because one of his kids went to Dalton. And so, Bear Stearns is like, that's Wall Street. That's like the top bankers and everything,
Yeah.
And, Alan Greenberg was one of the guys who's like, you're wasting your time here at Dalton, because he sees Epstein's ability to be incredibly charismatic. And like I said, Epstein was good at math. He very much was, but he didn't have the proper credentials. And you're going to see a long, long theme and trail of that throughout this whole network in these episodes. Interesting thing too about and through Alan Greenberg, like I said, he starts to work for Bear Stearns. Through Bear Stearns, he met like Edgar Bronfman, who was the head of Seagram's, which is like all the liquors, and they're one of the biggest, like they're like essentially almost like many hundreds of millions of dollars. That's how much they're worth, and their whole enterprise and company.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, like he meets this guy Edgar Bronfman, and through him he meets his brother Charles. His brother Charles is becomes these guys were all just happen to be Jewish and whatever. But when he was working at Bear Stearns and he's starting to make all these connections and whatever, he gets once he gets plugged into like Bear Stearns, he really starts to thrive in regards to the way that he meets with clients. And then he starts to he's like, I want all the high level clients. Give me the give me the 9-figure guys and the or 6-figure. Yeah, no, or give me the 7-figure guys to the 9 figures, and then eventually Epstein, around the 80s, he only wants to talk to billionaires. So another interesting thing, like just to make some a couple other additions here, is that like Alan Greenberg, the CEO here at Bear Stearns, like was also one of the largest. Him and or this guy Charles Bronfman and who we find out later, there's another billionaire, Lex Wexner, who we'll get to soon, are like these really powerful billionaire Jewish philanthropists. Sorry. And, we learned that this guy Greenberg also was part of the first Zionist fraternity. And, I know that some people are going to like either shake their heads or feel a little bit uncomfortable when I bring up the Jewish and Israel thing. But I think there's you can make your own stance on how you feel about like their influence over this, this network and, Epstein and all these people he knew. But this is part of the story. Like this is well reported on. It's not a fable or whatever. This is real stuff.
I mean, we have the whole thing with the former prime minister. I don't know if you're going to get to that later.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely, man.
All right.
Or we're going to get to a lot of that stuff.
we'll save that then.
Yeah. And so, it's interesting. So while being interviewed, jumping ahead a little bit with Epstein, they were asking him about like his time at Dalton, like, oh, did you have any sexual conduct with any of the students there? And then he goes, while I was a teacher? No.
Yeah.
And it's like, is that really the response you want to have, man? Like, that was reported by NPR,
That was after the sweetheart deal, right? So that was 2009. So
but it's just interesting, like, what, like,
he really just must have felt invincible if he's basically admitting that he did have sex with the students afterwards. I mean,
absolutely. Once again, I think when he comes to Bear Stearns, this is when he starts to really indulge in his sexual proclivities, And, an interesting thing about Alan Greenberg, too, is that he was really interested in these people called PSDs, which I think stands for poor, smart, but desperate to succeed. And once again, Epstein joins them at 23, and then 4 years later, he becomes a limited partner. So do you know what that means in regards to being a limited partner at the company? I assume that means you start to have a lot of stake in the company, and you're getting pretty ingratiated.
Yeah, you're like one of the top guys.
Absolutely. So once again, around now we're kind of jumping to the end of his time there. So in 1982, he starts his own finance company shortly after Jeffrey Epstein and Co. And so as he starts his own business, an interesting thing is that when he's meeting, like I said, when he starts his own company, that's when he's really meeting with billionaires and or several hundred million millionaires. And once again, this is you can't over highlight. This is when he starts meeting with these higher echelon people. We'll mention this in part 2, but that's what the kind of the sordid beauty, I would say, of him and Maxwell's relationship in an evil sense is that, like, Epstein very much, like, he had the power, but Ghislaine also had a ton of connections as well, but he's learning how to, like, be good with money.
Yeah, Ghislaine was born to a much richer family, so she already had a lot of those connections. But
Absolutely.
Jeff was already making them just through finance, so he kind of had access both of those ways.
It's so funny, like, just referring to him as Jeff, though, because, I mean, that's who he was, obviously. But, at this time as well, we'll mention this, too, once again, in part 2. Just, I'm sorry for all the PSAs, guys, but just in case, like, we will get to, there's so much stuff to get to, but Adnan Khashoggi and Douglas Leese are arms traffickers through Iran-Contra that Jeffrey Epstein meets at this point. And when he's at this time at Bear Stearns, he actually leaves because of a Ponzi scheme with Stephen Hoffenberg, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes. This is a great YouTube video. I showed this to Dan just a couple days ago. This is Epstein just referring to himself in the third person.
I realize what I am. I'm very comfortable in my own skin. I'm not an helicopter pilot. What I'm really free to do is I'm free to follow my own personality. So I'm free to accept. I can't make, as we discussed yesterday, I can't be totally wacko in what I do. It affects lots of other people who will get angry at what I do. So because then it affects me again. But on my own island, or on my own ranch, I can think the thoughts I want to think.
I can do what I want to do, and I'm free to explore as I see fit. This was an interview of that Epstein did with a journalist back in January 2003. So, once again, that's a little bit farther down the road, but I just thought it was an interesting thing I wanted to throw in there because, like, with a lot of this stuff, like, we don't see, like, a lot of videos of Epstein. Like, we see plenty of pictures and whatever, but we don't see him, like, talking that much. And an interesting part of this, too, is once he gets into the real rhythm of his, like, power, his grasp of power, like, he's known as, like, a networker through all these different people, but at the same time, he would always have, like, parties or dinners that he would throw, but it would be always at private residences. Like, he didn't want to be out in public. And so this is a little bit of a a precursor where I'm like, is this where like some of the possible like spy network comes in, where it's like, do you really want to be out there? Like, the media didn't even really know about who Epstein was in general. Not even like talking about the offenses till like I think the 90s or like right before the turn of the century.
Yeah, I think when he got the sweetheart deal, that was 2003. That was like the first time really that anyone knew who he was, and even then he wasn't like a household name until
Absolutely
a few years before his death. Really, his death was the thing. But yeah, it is interesting, like you said. So much of how he gained power and influence was through talking to people, and yet we just see so little of that. It was all behind closed doors, just with these millionaires and billionaires, and
right.
Basically just an entirely different world. Like if you think about our lives, everything is basically recorded and available, and
this wasn't
if
a
government
thing.
agency wants to figure out what you've been doing, what you've been up to, they can put all of that together. But he's been moving in just complete secrecy.
Yeah, and this is like the textbook definition, right, of conspiracy, like behind the shadows, conspiring. So we're going to jump to a couple of the key points in the timeline. So we'll have these as we go through, guys. But once again, and this is where we'll like I said, there's a little bit of jumping around, but overall, I think this is in a pretty digestible way that we can really lock in. So according to Vicky Ward, once again, this is one of like her and Julie K. Brown are just a couple of the studs that really just hammered this through and really exposed the first people that exposed and got on this story. So once again, Epstein begins his abuses in the 1980s while Bear Stearns Associated Press publishes a story on him and his trips, meeting associates. And once again, this is when he gets known to the greater public. So I think there's like I'll throw a picture in here, guys, if you can see it, but there's like a picture of him, like the great talented, like Jeffrey Epstein. And it's like him with like dark hair or whatever. It looks like a completely different dude. And of course, like Epstein was a very like good-looking guy, and once again, he is charismatic. So part of these things too with the Wall Street bankers is like, can you even just like shoot the shit at them, essentially? Because half the time, these are all shallow people, and they have their parties and this and that, and once again, it's just assimilating and building like the undercurrent of his network. So 2005, an investigation begins at West Palm Beach. A report comes out that there was a molestation at his mansion. This woman ended up being Courtney Wild, which we're going to cover soon. And then in May 2006, when police prepared to charge him, this case is handed to a grand jury. So I wanted to pull this up, Dan, because I thought this was interesting. Right. Once again, I don't know a lot about the law and whatever. I'm not a lawyer. What I wanted to figure out, why was this case handed to a grand jury. So this is just the AI overview, but I thought it was pretty applicable. So when a case is handed to a grand jury, it means a prosecutor is presenting evidence to a group of citizens, the grand jury, to decide if there's a probable cause to formally charge someone with a serious crime, essentially acting as a shield, quote unquote, against unfounded prosecutions, not to determine guilt or innocence. Sorry. Added a couple S's there. If the grand jury agrees there's enough evidence, they issue an indictment allowing the case to proceed to a public trial.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so just a little bit more, context with that. So, June 2008, like Epstein is indicted on charges by a grand jury for soliciting prostitution, and then this is also when the FBI they open up an investigation. And then June 2008, Epstein pleads guilty to the state charges, and then they added another one, including, solicitation of prostitution from a minor. So then a non-prosecution agreement with federal prosecutors allowed him to avoid federal charges, resulting in an 18-month sentence time, and then which became a work release program, which this is known as the sweetheart deal.
Right. I've jumped the gun a little. I already said the sweetheart deal a couple times.
No, that's fine. We're getting to it. So.
That's what we're referring to, is basically that.
Explain what that was.
He only had to be in jail for 12 hours a day, and that was only 6 out of 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And he was able to go on work release. He's able to hang out in his office. He's basically just part-time in jail for
which is crazy.
For a crime that is not...
You should have begun 20 years or more.
Yeah. I don't think there's any real, like, precedent for those kinds of sexual crimes against minors to have any kind of mercy in the plea deal, any kind of... I don't know, you should be in maximum security usually.
Yeah, and at the time, dude, like, I just found this out on the way over. Like, they knew that there was 32 people that came out against him in West Palm Beach. I think it originally or eventually became at least 60 or more. Now people are saying, like, there's up to, you know, we'll get to the real numbers later. But, you know, an often overlooked part of this deal, too, is of this sweetheart deal, Dan, which I thought was fascinating, is that it gave immunity not just to Epstein, but to 10 other co-conspirators. 10 others.
That's
and what's interesting, so we'll actually get to, we can probably actually figure out through detective work some of these names.
Yeah, it's interesting considering a lot of the stuff coming out of the Trump administration saying that, Epstein worked alone.
Yeah.
It was just a one-man operation. And it's like, we already have stuff even from way back then that's counter to that narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, we're going to talk about all the political maneuvering around the Epstein files all in part 3 once again. So just so everyone's locked in about that. Also, too, once again, Thomas Massey, like, and we'll be referencing this, he names, like, the types of people that are listed. And I think we can fill in the blank who some of these people actually are. Daryl Cooper, you know, who's known as kind of like an alternative journalist. He's been, sometimes people give him a little bit of crap because he's been the guy that's like, Churchill was like a villain in World War II. So I think that was overall a hyperbolic statement. But Daryl Cooper actually did he did like 5.5 hours on Epstein. That's on Spotify, which is really good. I've actually pulled a good amount of the stuff, including a lot of the Epstein art and stuff that was in his mansion and whatnot. But so while he's like on this probation and this super sweetheart deal, like, he traveled abroad many times, which like violates your parole. Like, you know, that's just, you know, you're in jail. You're not flying places. Like, make it make sense. I feel like that can apply to like everything we talk about. Make it make sense. The sweetheart
the worst
deal.
part is, like, it was 13 months too. So like they couldn't even hold him in the country for 13 months.
I know, it doesn't. And this is when, so we'll be talking about this as we go through once again, but like, is this possible, like, when he like he's already an informant, like the government already knows about him and already is like, hey, go easy on him? Because once again, we're going to be talking about Alex Acosta, like why he did this, like later on. But this is one of the facts. I'm just throwing this out there, guys, to keep it like on the side of your mind, anyways. Maybe not the back or the front, but on the side. This is where it's possible that, you know, people would say CIA, FBI, like, and the FBI was involved in you know, reaching Alex Acosta at this point. You know, this was the funny video, Dan, that we were going to talk about.
Right,
guys, this it feels like this interview isn't even real, but it actually is. This is Epstein getting interviewed.
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, I do.
Could you please give us your name?
Jeffrey Epstein.
Is it true, sir, that you have what's been described as an egg-shaped penis?
Form, vague, and definite, and I'm going to give you the first one of Mr. Cuban.
He's laughing.
These types of questions are not only argumentative, but directed in a manner to embarrass Mr. Epstein.
This is one of Epstein's lawyers. I don't think it's Dershowitz, it's the other guy.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like Dershowitz.
Sir, according to the police department's probable cause affidavit, one witness described your penis as oval-shaped and claimed when erect it was thick towards the bottom, but was thin and small towards the head portion, and called it egg-shaped. Those are not my words, I apologize. But as Mr.
Look at Epstein.
This is I'm willing to continue.
Dude, that's just like, I can't believe that video is real.
Yeah, there's so few videos of him speaking, and Why would that?
Have
be
you
the
ever
first?
seen that before? Have you heard of that?
Not until you showed it to me. Not until I read the outline.
I just randomly saw this too, and I was like, "Oh my god, man, that is absolutely insane." So apparently, there was actually a goal of mentioning this was to get him like annoyed and worked up, and try to get him under his skin a little bit. It's interesting because you watch that right there, and he's just like coyly smiling. He doesn't even look annoyed, but I think also it's these people. Of course, he was annoyed and pissed that he had to even do anything, Yeah. So, July 2009, Epstein's released after serving 13 months of the 18. So he didn't even serve the full amount, And once again, I said this a couple minutes ago, or in the beginning, where it's like it's important to realize like we don't really know a lot of what happened after from here to 2019 when he gets, when they really got to him. But also. Oh, this is conspiracy brain Ben, but was he allowed to be found out at this point, or do you think well, this is, I guess, the premise of my question is based upon him being an informant for FBI. So for FBI, he would be known as a CI, I think, which is a clandestine informant, and for the CIA, he'd be known as an asset.
Yeah, you'd have to believe that he was intelligence before. We don't know exactly when he became it, but it had to be before he got the deal because there's just no other explanation.
Right, and guys, we'll get to the intelligence debate like later on in the series as well. So, so once he gets off this deal, he is labeled now as a sex offender, but he tried to rebrand himself as like a philanthropist. Can't believe I can't say that word right, but it's interesting because we say philanthropist, right? We look at Lex Wexner, and then we talked about the guys from Seagram, Charles Bronfman. So he's like perfectly assimilating himself with these guys that he's running with, right? And and he wanted to be also known as an intellect. So this is when he starts. I think this is about mid. Well, he was already involved in like Harvard and whatnot, but he tried to really rebrand himself as like, I'm an intellect, I want to help people out, Which
is kind of funny because you can read some of the like released emails, and the way he types in them is like he's constantly misspelling words.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's weird.
We
It's
could probably pull up a couple of them actually as we go on.
All right,
but that's a great point, huh?
Yeah, and he thought of him. I don't know if he just said he was a philanthropist, because that's kind of like if you're rich and you want to get good PR, you can just say that and give away a tiny amount of your money. But I do kind of get the idea that in his own brain, he thought of himself as a good person, which that's insane. But it's
Epstein was a psychopath, Dan. I don't know if you knew that. But
yeah,
no. Yeah, and this is like, once again, man, ties to MIT. Like, made 10 donations from 2002 to 2017, up to $850K, so almost $1 million. So, anything else on that before we move on to his properties and some of surveillance? Like, we'll tackle his wealth. Yeah,
let's move on to that.
Cool. So, Epstein's overall net worth, like a lot of people kind of, it's open for debate, like how much he was actually fully worth. Like, was Epstein a billionaire himself? I think he had enough influence that he could get whatever he wanted.
Right. Like, even if he didn't have $1 billion himself, if he could ask, I'm sure Lex Wexner and his buddies were buying him stuff all the time.
Right.
I mean, he was rich enough to afford St. James Island. So
yeah,
you have to say that's pretty rich.
Yeah, like if you own an island, like I think you're okay.
Yeah.
So, but if you tried to put a pin on how much he was worth, people would say he's around $560 million. So he owned 4 planes. One was a 747. The other were Gulfstream jets, so a little bit smaller, like the private planes. And this is when it becomes like the heavy accomplice. Like, this is where I think I'm like, how is this the Lolita Express, which we're going to get to in a second? Like, this is the sex trafficking stuff. Like, this isn't like, oh, I'm a dirty like Wall Street, sex addict or whatever. Like, this is the, and in my humble opinion, I'm like, this seems like trafficking to me. And maybe like, I don't know. At times, like it's definitely you have to draw the line between, is this a crime or is it just like agreed sexual deviancy? Once again, I reference Diddy and how I'm like, yeah, that's just sexual deviancy that like old enough like consenting adults can do whatever you want. If like it's not against my will or my religious beliefs, but I'm like, having sex parties and stuff is completely evil, and I think it's like basically satanic. But sometimes if everyone's involved, or if everyone is a consenting adult, it's almost like, think about, once again, we won't, like I said, there's some relation to like, pornography in this, but it goes to show this overall arching theme in America and stuff. Does that make any sense, what I just said? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I would just, because with these flights, he took 2,600 of them. So this is like, that's also by Business Insider. Once again, we're going to try to, cite our sources, with our MLA format as we go out, as we go throughout the podcast. But, this, all these flights that like he was doing 600 hours of flights a year. That's like 25 days straight of just flying. And, there's a ton of business people and influencers and athletes that, you fly however many, you get logged your miles. Like I know one of our friends, like, with your credit card, you can get like points and stuff for that. Well, I'm sure Epstein got plenty of points.
Yeah.
So anyways, let's jump into the mansion in New York. So, we'll start there at least. So, you actually can go and visit this place. Like you can walk by it on the street. Actually, it's, if anyone wants to know, it's 9 East 71st Street. It's 21,000 square feet, 7-floor townhouse. I think at the time it was the most sought after home in New York.
I mean, that New York is just insanely expensive. That's like, you got to be one of the richest people in the world, or friends with the richest people in the world, I guess.
Right. And then obviously this is given to him by Les Wexner. Once again, guys, just hold on a couple more minutes, because right after this, we're going to go into all of Epstein's, like, or a good amount of his very famous connections and through there. So Lex Wexner is a big part of this. But how did he even get this place, dude? Like Wexner just gave him this? It doesn't make sense. Here's a picture, Dan, of 7 East 71st Street, really quickly.
Photos of U.S. presidents, tech titans, even a pope, a network of hidden video cameras, even a taxidermied tiger. Those are among the items found in sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's 7-story, 21,000 square foot Manhattan.
Watch this picture you're about to see, guys. This is one of the more disturbing things you'll see, or creepiest. Look at this.
A sculpture of a bride that appears to be dangling on a rope in the central atrium of Epstein's New York residence.
What the dude?
Yeah.
What the That's like open. That's like you're not hiding any of your evil fetishes or kinks.
Yeah. So much of
like
the Epstein stuff is like he's just openly boasting about it.
Yeah,
almost.
He's extremely braggadocious and arrogant about it.
By putting up pictures of all the famous people and all this art that's just, I don't know.
Like that's definitely like a child. Like if you look at it from other camera angles and whatnot, this is we can keep playing this, I guess, as we go. Yeah, pictures with the Pope, dude. Elon, Mick Jagger. Like it is mind blowing, dude. Like his mansion was something else, man.
One thing I do want to bring up about the mansion, they mentioned it at the beginning of the clip too, is that he had the security cameras everywhere, all over the place. We still don't have any of that footage, really. So
yeah,
that's something we know that is out there, or at least was out there at some point, that probably indicts a lot of important people.
Oh, absolutely. But this is, once again, we'll bring this up later. The FBI has said there is no client list. There's no evidence of sex trafficking or whatever. I think I'm like, maybe the client list, like maybe that's a semantic thing where you can get around that. But
Right, there's no literal full list of clients, but there is enough evidence to figure out who the clients would have been. And it's frustrating because I don't know that much about Kash Patel, but I know that he had a podcast before he became, and he was all about. He probably
the guy underneath him as well.
Yeah, he probably had a podcast episode a lot like this one that we're doing right now.
Absolutely.
Where he talked about how important it was to release everything and that the government needs transparency, but then...
Transparency is bullshit because it's political.
Yeah. But then he got his job and now he changed his tune.
Yeah. You mentioned the Epstein Island, right?
Yeah.
Little St. James. So this was a place worth $63 million. So through different testimonies of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, a lot of other women that we'll be getting to, this is where like group sex and orgies were happening. Epstein also flew. One thing that's like not really always well covered is a good amount of these victims were actually like people, foreign women from Russia that would it wouldn't just be from Russia, but Belarus and similar countries over there.
Well, I should bring up going way back to like the 80s, early 90s, the first kind of victims of Epstein and Ghislaine, where they would just drive down to the poorer neighborhoods and pick up like people who didn't have parents or their parents were drug addicts just because they knew they were the most vulnerable. So I think that was probably the same logic with importing people from all over the world.
Absolutely.
Just take advantage of, the least protected people.
Yeah,
and that's
people
part of why it took so long for us to even...
People act like that's not the playbook. The playbook is to get someone that's from, now you can just sue someone to an oblivion for... Sometimes I wonder how like defamation and stuff works, because I'm like, the way we'll be talking about some of these other people, like, it's the good thing the podcast isn't that big.
Yeah, if it was bigger, you'd be
getting sued. Oh man, I just don't even know how you fight this and how you don't like the feeling of hopelessness even as you're like researching all this stuff. Like I said, I don't know what the biggest thing that's really caught your eye the most, but it just seems like all this information seems overwhelming. Back to the island, of course. Like here are just some. This is this wasn't it's not from Reddit, but I happened to find a link for this. These are just this is what the island looked like. It only shows a couple parts, but here's like a pool. I still feel like a little uneasy just seeing this. Once again, like just walking around the island. I mean, it's beautiful, man. It's great, but it's like, you're on an island. Like, there's no escaping. And once again, like, this is what I don't understand. Like, everyone knows the Epstein Island thing was real, so I don't understand how like I'll try to say I'll try not to dunk on the FBI and CIA just to do it. There's times where I'm sure I probably will, but I want to try to be like, slightly responsible with my words. Where say the Department of Justice or whatever, like, so what was happening at this island was, so they were just like hanging out and having like, shooting bang bros like at the island. Like, no, it was like well known that like many people came to this island. So I'm like, this is the island itself is sex trafficking. Like, what do you try to like? I don't understand how you can like justify that away.
Yeah, it doesn't make any
because the
sense.
island was raided.
Yeah, and there's plenty of eyewitness accounts because like there were some people who are on the island just as like maintenance people who claimed, they've confirmed a lot of the people
and
who
you don't
there.
hear shit about like the landscapers you hear a couple things about like a cook or the caretakers, but they also at the same time like they claim a lot of them there's only like 2 people that have come out, or very very low number, and they all claim like naivety that they don't know what's going on. But I'm like, nobody buys that. I
am kind of curious. I don't know what the legal status of the island is now because it was owned by Epstein.
Yeah, so his company like LSJ LLC bought it in '98. But Epstein, or this company bought it, but Epstein was the sole proprietor of this like company, so if he bought it for himself.
I don't know what you can do besides just like destroy everything, because I don't know. It feels kind of weird to like imagine it as like a tourist kind of gross place, but I feel like there are people who would want to make it into that.
Well, we're gonna get to Zorro Ranch in a second, but Zorro Ranch is like completely like isolated as well, where it was, you know. He also bought another island, Greater St. James, which is right next to it in 2016. But once again, it's like, how do you buy an island? Like, I don't know. The Epstein Island eventually did get raided itself by the FBI. I bring that up because of Epstein's third property, the Zorro Ranch. So this was worth between $18 and $25 million roughly, 8,000 acres surrounding it, which means like it was really like put away by itself. It was 26,000 square feet. Once again, just absolute. It's like 10 times the size of like a normal house that like we grew up in or whatever. You know, this place had a private airstrip hangar, a firehouse, pool, stables. And one interesting thing about the Zorro Ranch, which like. This is one of the things where like I start to really lose my mind, or I just like it's hard for me to even learning about all the stuff about Epstein. Like it's hard to when I look at him, like it's easy for people to be like, oh, you're a pedophile, like you're an a-hole, you're a pervert. But he was like so many things, and I'm not trying to glorify him or whatever. The farthest thing from it, you know. But it's very possible, dude, that like the eugenic stuff took place probably at Zorro Ranch.
Right. So just to go further into that, I guess he's definitely a narcissist, because he believed that like his line, his seed was powerful. And so if he could just impregnate as many women as possible, that would be an experiment to improve the human race. Like that's how highly he thought of himself.
Right. And I'm going to turn to my camera directly. So what Dan just said, we will cover a little bit more in part 3, but like that fact of eugenics and like continuing his seed and whatever, that is 100% true. The New York Times covered it.
Yeah.
I don't feel like a lot of people know that sometimes.
Yeah.
That's like crazy, man. That once again, you tell someone like there's this, you know, pedophile island who's doing all this selling and trafficking young minors to billionaires, and he's looking on trying to enhance his DNA. Like what the hell? Like get off your tinfoil hat and go touch grass. Well, nothing wrong with that, but that's all true.
Yeah.
This is all fact. So I just want, like, as we want to go, like, there'll be times where we'll have to like do a full stop and like, this is a fact. This is not a conspiracy, or this is not like a theory. This is very, very legit.
I think if anything, the eugenics thing might have just gone under the radar because we don't know.
There was a lot of other stuff. Yeah.
We don't know to what extent he actually carried out experiments. We just know that he talked to a lot of people and he believed that these experiments would be a good idea, and he planned on doing them.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And so a crazy thing about Zorro Ranch, it was never raided by the FBI.
That's insane, yeah. Like, not even in 2019.
Yeah, this was sold. The property was sold for $27.5 million in 2021. Also, there's this guy Bill Richardson who I think helped get him this this property. He used to be the governor of New Mexico, because that's where. If I didn't mention this was in New Mexico. He was also a guy underneath Clinton. And Virginia Giuffre and the Farmer Girls are accusing this guy Bill Richardson of. He's just one of the other guys that are on the list. But it's interesting too, because like buying this property too in New Mexico, I don't know if this was a reason why he got it, but also the sex offending laws in New Mexico it's lower actually. So like if you're how it's like under 18, like in once again Florida and New York and stuff.
Yeah.
In Zorro Ranch it's 16. And Virginia Giuffre went there when she was 17. It's just a thought. So the Paris apartment too. Were you aware of this place? This was
really.
This was a really famous one too. This apartment was worth $9 million. This is a place where Epstein and Harvey Weinstein had a falling out because Harvey Weinstein made a move on one of Epstein's favorite girls at the time. So here's a little bit of what that looked like. This is a Prince Andrew here. We'll get to him very soon. So here's just some stuff, but basically this is in the heart of Paris. You know, once again, many floors. This place was raided. Even like, look at this. This artwork is just very interesting. We're gonna get to the real artwork in part 3, which is like gonna be extremely disturbing and.
It's like disturbing and weird artwork, but contrasted with like the gold and luxury, opulence, kind of stuff. It's just, I don't know. Outside of being disgusting, it just is bad taste. I feel like.
Absolutely, man. You know, and another unlooked thing. Once, like Epstein, and he loved. Even though you don't see him wearing like extravagant, like jewelry all the time. Like he between his art and the jewelry, that he had like $300 million worth of it. So, yeah, man. Going back to what we referenced a second ago, the Lolita Express, Dan. So tell me about this. This is a $10 million plane.
Yeah, this is the big one that, I mean, technically, so we have the flight logs from this. Technically, being on the flight logs doesn't necessarily mean you were guilty of any crime.
Very important to mention, yeah.
But also at the same time, this is the plane that took most of the people to Epstein Island who wanted to go there.
This is the actual Lolita Express, by the way. This plane should be like decommissioned, burned, like I think someone bought this plane.
Yeah, it's so unassuming looking.
Yeah. And it's rumored, but some people said like they made padded like floors like in the plane. And I think the Lolita Express definitely had like beds on the plane, you know.
And even, I mean, the name is not like a name that journalists made up because he's a pedophile.
Please highlight this.
The name is a name that Jeffrey Epstein chose to name it because he enjoyed the book Lolita, which I haven't read it. I know it's a classic book, which is it's from the perspective of a pedophile. It's not supposed to be glorifying pedophilia, but a lot of pedophiles like Jeffrey Epstein seem to really like it for the wrong reasons.
Right. Absolutely. And I did want to highlight this too. So really one quick thing I actually just wanted to slightly correct you on is that Lolita actually was not named by him. It was other people and passengers that named it the Lolita Express.
Okay.
So guys, I want to, doesn't just semantics really, but it goes to show you that like other people know what's going on here. Other people nickname this thing the Lolita. Why would they name it that? There's no such thing. He did no sex trafficking. Lolita is a 1955 novel written by Russian and Armenian novelist Vladimir Nabokov. The protagonist and narrator is a French literature professor who moves to New England and writes under the pseudonym He details his obsession and victimization of a 12-year-old girl, Dolores Hayes, whom he describes as a
nymphette.
Is that like
a
nymphomaniac and piglet?
Yeah, like a small... Yeah, that's gross.
That word is disgusting. Hopefully we can say it. Hoffenberg kidnaps and SAs Dolores after becoming her stepfather. Privately, he calls her Lolita, the Spanish diminutive for Dolores. This novel was written in English, but fear of censorship in the U.S. Really? And Britain led it to being first published in Paris by Olympia Press. This book has received critical acclaim regardless of the controversy. So I just wanted to read one other quick thing too. So basically he's, I think we've given it enough.
Yeah. And like we know that Epstein himself was a fan of the book because there's some images that were released in the Epstein Files release where it was like, this is really disgusting, but they're having girls actually write lines from the novel like on their body parts.
We have photos of that, actually.
Which, unfortunately, I've already seen them, but...
Jeez. All right. Well, here we go. We keep moving along. We keep trucking. So, once again, that kind of like, just once again, guys, laying the format of his empire and his enterprise. So now we're going to move on to a lot of his powerful relationships and testimonies to this.
So we've been talking about Les Wexner a lot, so now we can kind of just establish who that is. He's the owner of Victoria's Secret. He's a billionaire. He met through Robert Meister, who I don't really know that much about.
Yeah, he met him basically through the mid-1980s. It's really interesting too, because like one of his former advisors, Harold Levin, I think, was very outspoken against Jeffrey Epstein, and because he was like, Epstein was brought on, and I don't know if you mentioned this, but this guy owns Victoria's Secret, Pink, Abercrombie and Fitch, Bed Bath and Body Works, worth like $5 billion or something. And this guy, one of Wexner's former guys thought Epstein was untrustworthy. I think I have this one link right here. This is just a little picture, Dan. But this is this article says New York Times derails how Les Wexner won't met sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein as he built wealth. Well, this is misinformation, Dan, because Jeffrey Epstein isn't a sex trafficker, according to the DOJ.
Yeah, no.
So this is Epstein and Wexner. Why is this face blotted out? It's almost like Bill Gates or whatever.
I don't know who that is. Yeah, they were best friends for a long time, and I don't know. It's hard to say because I don't have evidence for this, but from all the stuff I've watched, it kind of seems like Les Wexner was really like his primary patron in terms of
either him or probably Black. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, do you want to talk about power of attorney and all that? 91.
Yeah. So he gave power of attorney to 91, and then.
Yeah, and
fired his financial staff.
Could you describe what giving a power of attorney is, by the way?
Yeah, he just gave him power over his finances.
Yeah,
which is
why did he do
amount
that?
Of trust to give to someone when you have that much money. You'd have to be really close to someone to give them power of attorney. Even the amount of money I have. I'd have to really trust someone.
Yeah, you'd have to really think. Yeah, you wouldn't even trust like your best friend with that.
Yeah.
And they described like Wexner hiring on Epstein as an economic arrangement. It's just so interesting. So Epstein gains great favor through this, right? So once again, this is just good. Like. Wexner's like the first billionaire, right? We mentioned when he was at Bear Stearns, he eventually gets to the point where he gets arrogant enough. We're like, I'm only dealing with high-end clients, or where like 10-figure clients, I think would be billion, right? Yeah, 10-figure clients, which is just absolutely insane to think about too. Another thing, by the way, when Jeffrey Epstein starts his own business in his own company, he's known for having extremely well-disciplined but well-looking women and secretaries that follow him around like all the time, and everyone's like was kind of shocked because they were like low-key like models that were his his people underneath him. And an interesting thing too about being part of Victoria's Secret, Epstein oftentimes, I think this is probably 80s, maybe 90s too, would pose as a Victoria's Secret like talent scout. But really, like, it's interesting too. Breaking Points was doing a segment on Wexner where they were saying how a lot of people that were in Wexner's residence did not ever see Epstein like around the premises. And that's just like it adds to the once again, is this fully confirming it? No, but it's giving some more context, I guess, about how strange this all is, and so apparently at his estate, because he had a crazy his mansion. I'll look this up really quickly. Lex Wexner's mansion in Ohio, dude. It's like almost almost Victorian. Give me 2 seconds to look. Les Wexner. This is what the house in Ohio looked like, by the way. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Also, guys, too, I'm so sorry to backtrack really quickly, but I didn't show this picture earlier, but this is a picture of Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, by the way, with Jeffrey Epstein's. Maybe I can splice this in later. But if you look at pictures of Zorro Ranch right here, it really is completely, or if you just want to go look it up on your own, Zorro Ranch was completely like, you know how Little St. James was like hid from everyone and like separated by sea and water. Like this was separated by land, and there were like many gates you had to go through to get to Zorro Ranch, by the way. So sorry, I didn't mention that earlier. That's my bad. I apologize. But just to give you once again a couple more visual representations, and there's like a freaking helicopter pad at his like house. It's so interesting. So, but just wrapping up really quickly about Les Wexner. Les Wexner also is known as once again, Dan, philanthropist. He's the third largest owner ever to the Jewish Federation of North America. And Lex Wexner was never interviewed by the district or the Department of Justice. How the hell does that happen?
Yeah. I don't know.
Untouchable people, Ben.
Nothing happened to him. Nothing happened to, well, you wanted to talk about Dershowitz. He's also just walking around.
Dude, you know? Epstein's own lawyer
yeah.
was alleged against him. And now one really creepy and strange thing about this is that Virginia Giuffre like makes this statement about Alan Dershowitz, and then he vehemently countersues her, and then she eventually retracted her statements. But you know, Alan Dershowitz, well, he's logged on Epstein's plan 11 times. He is his top lawyer, so do with that what you will. But there's enough stories from Virginia Giuffre where I'm very comfortable in believing his guilt. You know.
Yeah. Well, Giuffre, I mean, she came out very early. I don't know exactly what year she came out, but she came out early enough that we've had so much stuff that's come out that's like matched her story that it's hard to not pretty much completely believe it. Like she was talking about Prince Andrew years and years before he was publicly.
Yeah, her and the farmers were basically the first ones to really come out. I think the farmers even, like I said, we'll get to them like pretty soon. But the farmers were the ones that they filed some stuff. Like both of the sisters, Maria and Annie, filed lawsuits or whatever the word is in 96. For Dershowitz too, like. He was, I'm going to pull up this link here. He was very active, and when like the first statements from West Palm Beach were coming to Epstein, he did some disgusting things where he would, and you know, I get it that like there's a side of the law and you have to represent your client or whatever, but I'm not going to defend Epstein or Dershowitz or whatever. But he would basically, like Courtney Wild, we're going to be getting to her once again soon. But he would victim shame the shit out of these women and be like, "Oh, you're a prostitute, you're a hoe," like all these things. Like these are 16-year-old girls. Who the fuck are you to say that?
Yeah, that's gross.
I have this link here about Epstein buying silence. I think this is in relation to Dershowitz.
Had hundreds of millions of dollars, and we don't know where that came from. There's no real full explanation for that.
Phillips.
And the men who propped him up financially are culpable in this. So I am looking for a money trail, and I'm also looking for any sign of civil lawsuits, because the other thing that I do know from having reported on this for a long time is that Epstein bought silence. By, you know, when some of his male friends, when their names popped up in the headlines, he said, "I'll pay to settle this, to make this go away." How do I know this? Because Alan Dershowitz, who you know well, I know well, you know, has told me this on the record. He tried to do it with Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz said no and ended up, you know, settling years-long litigation with Virginia Giuffre, who said she might have been, confused, mistaken. So, again, I'm looking for that. I'm also looking for the 302s.
Remember these later.
When they interview witnesses, because I know, having sat through Ghislaine-Maxwell's criminal trial.
You get the idea. So the 302s, once again, are that's something that we still need to, that it's good to be aware of now, because that's the FBI statements that still haven't made it out somehow. That's more on Dershowitz. Geez, Dan, we're still got a lot to get through before part one. So, but no rush. So, once again, just have that, regardless of whether Dershowitz was guilty or not, like, have that in the front of your mind as we move on. Once again, we're just going to start going down the list of some other guys, once again, regarding to people that knew Epstein. Right. But there was Stephen Hoffenberg.
Hoffenberg, he was the one who ran the Ponzi scheme.
Explain that.
It was just a basic, he was taking investments from people, promising them huge returns. Then he'd take investments from other people. He'd pay off the first people with the new investments.
It's kind of funny, isn't it?
And then the goal is, at some point, you just are sitting on a giant stack of money and you run away with it. But I don't know exactly how many other co-conspirators there were besides Hoffenberg, but basically everyone went to jail for some amount of time besides Epstein.
Right. And this, once again, this is like 87 to 93. Hoffenberg goes to prison. Epstein avoids prosecution. And then Hoffenberg from jail goes, Epstein was the mastermind. Like, how did he not go to prison? But it's also interesting because, like, this is when you start to learn about, like, the money laundering thing. And that's where I think he probably learned how to money launder through Bear Stearns. Also, once again, he knew Douglas Leese and Adnan Khashoggi, which were arms traffickers.
Yeah.
And Stephen Hoffenberg loved Epstein at the time because he had no moral compass. It's like all this stuff is like starting to really, this is really when you start to see, oh wow, now I see how this applies here, and you start to see like a couple pieces of the puzzle start to fill in. Obviously, when you get to the end of the series, the spoiler alert, there's still many missing pieces, but from what we know now. So now, we go to Leon Black, right? So this guy met, Leon Black was a billionaire, a titan of Wall Street. He met Epstein in 96 through a mutual acquaintance at lunch. Net worth, I think it was, $9 billion. Through 2012 through 2017, he pays Epstein $158 million for financial services. So this is another crazy thing like Wexner, where it's like, all right, dude, like this money transferring makes 0 sense. And these billionaires, like, they love their money, man. They don't just drop and roll over for anyone.
Yeah.
Leon Black was a big guy that, like, he went to a lot of dinners with Epstein. He was really one of his primary sources of income, probably after the sweetheart deal, right up until 2019. He's the co-founder of the private equity firm Apollo Global Management. He was later CEO of BlackRock. I don't know a lot about BlackRock, but I know some of the stuff they're doing with buying homes is like pretty
they own a
nefarious.
Good chunk of the housing market.
Yeah.
They can just control prices.
This could be true or not true, but there was an allegation that Leon Black assaulted 2 women at the Manhattan estates at Jeffrey Epstein's. So one case was dismissed by a judge, another lawsuit was dropped, and through recent emails, he paid 3 separate women $100,000 each. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Like,
that's pretty
make it
obvious.
Make sense. I should keep doing that. And it's interesting. And through some of these new emails, it's shown that he's demanding, or Epstein's demanding of Leon Black to pay him, like, at one point, one thing was up to $41 million. I don't have it written down here, but once again, Breaking Point, who's been super on Epstein through one of this guy, Ryan Grimm at Drop Site. Just incredible journalism. And a part of this argument, I guess, about him giving Epstein this much money is that Epstein helped him. What was him giving Epstein $170 million was like a thank you because, like, through, like, Epstein was like tax loopholes.
Yeah, so the idea was that Epstein was giving him good financial advice. So
yeah, saved him $1 billion.
$170 million was just a part of what he saved me, which
so generous of him.
Yeah.
Tell us about Bill Gates. Tell us about your guy.
Bill, good old Billy Windows. He He was friends with Epstein before the sweetheart deal and all that, but he
Yeah.
didn't immediately cut ties with him after. In fact, he remained friends with him for, 2011? So he met with him 5 or 6 times after he was a convicted sexual offender.
Sheesh, dude.
And, yeah, that was a large part of his divorce with Melinda Gates.
Exactly, and people just seem to overlook that.
Yeah, she saw what he was doing and with Epstein, and she hated Epstein, didn't want anything to do with him. And
Yeah.
Bill just continued to hang out with him.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So check this out. This is just an AI overview once again. Not that we should treat this as gospel, but based on available reports and statements from Bill Gates, his interactions with Epstein were described as a huge mistake, and according to a 2001 Evening Standard report, involved Epstein making many millions out of his business links with the likes of Bill Gates, Donald Trump, and Ohio billionaire Leslie Wexner. What a surprise! So Gates stated he met with Epstein to discuss philanthropy. Interesting, because that ties in about Epstein wanting to rebrand his image.
Yeah.
Specifically hoping to raise funds for global health initiatives. And but basically, while Gates claimed their meetings were focused on philanthropy and occurred in 2011 or later, reports indicate the association and the surrounding scrutiny lasted for years.
Bill Gates is, I think, a really good example of a rich guy who has really, really good PR. Because he has done a lot of, I will say he's done objectively good philanthropic things in Africa and all that, but a lot of it is to soften his image, because Microsoft is a pretty brutal company back in the day. They beat out a lot of the other tech companies by,
of course,
just classic business stuff being the worst of the worst.
Yeah, and I heard through some of these other journalists that it's alleged that Bill Gates wanted to use Epstein so he could control Harvard. Remember, we talked about in our podcast a little while ago, we were talking about surveillance states AI. We're saying how there was this crazy story that was actually real about how Bill Gates wanted to blot out the sun. Remember? That was through Harvard stuff, and he had a lot of connections to Harvard. This is a quick video of Bill Gates saying how he regrets his relationship with Epstein.
Do you regret the relationship that you maintained with him against Melinda's advice and wishes?
Oh, I've said that you're going way back in time. But yeah,
new audience.
I will say for the, over 100 time, I shouldn't have had dinners with him.
Epstein had a way of sexually compromising people. Is that what Melinda...
Wait, hold on just 1 second. Sexually compromising people. Isn't that blackmail?
Yeah.
I thought there wasn't any blackmail, Dan.
I don't know. I'm very confused because I trust the DOJ.
No. I mean, No, I had dinner with him, and that's all.
And that you regret the relationship.
She doesn't believe it.
and the relationship between the foundation and Epstein, which
there never was any relationship of any kind.
That's I don't know why I'm getting emotional. This is not. I shouldn't get emotional about this, Dan. So, it's interesting. We're going to get to this very soon, but there's a guy who has an even worse time defending his relationship with Epstein.
Who is that?
We'll get there soon.
All right.
So, an interesting, another, just some popular other people that knew Epstein was a famous disgraced actor, Kevin Spacey.
I didn't know about this one.
Oh, you didn't? Yeah.
So
Kevin Spacey had to go against a case where he molested actually, but through one of his movies. It's really interesting because a lot of these characters, he's very good at. He plays he's always had good relationships with Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
And he kind of labeled it I loved House of Cards for so long, but House of Cards obviously is about a corrupt president. It's so funny that he ended up having this this scandal. And then throughout this, it found out in 2002, Epstein, Chris Tucker, and Clinton flew to Africa to raise awareness for HIV/AIDS for the Clinton Foundation. Here's one thing where this woman, Shante Davies. Well, actually, I don't think I'll have to play it. So we'll talk about it later. But if you want to learn more about Shante Davies' testimony, is that we'll show a really crazy picture, which I think once again totally and Not fully, but I think totally. If you're looking at this from like a objective perspective, like it proves that Clinton was a pedophile and whatever. But this is Kevin Spacey. Or Kevin Spacey demands that the government should fully expose the files. And it's funny, his tweet said something along the lines of like, I know this is not about me, but the government should fully release the Epstein files. And then it's like, also it would make you look a lot better than you were.
Yeah.
Very shocking photo right here. This is Kevin Spacey and Ghislaine in Buckingham Palace, literally on the throne.
That's insane. I wouldn't think that anyone would be allowed to sit on the thrones like that, but
once again, we'll mention him.
Spacey.
We'll mention him part 2 about. We'll mention it right now about Ghislaine and her relationship with Prince Andrew. It's just so interesting because all this stuff we're talking about, like we haven't even gotten to the Maxwells. Are you okay? By the way, you're not going to get home till a little bit later than we thought.
That's fine.
I feel like we're really in rhythm right now.
Yeah, we're doing good. Let's keep firing off.
Yeah. All right, man. So Prince Andrew now.
Yeah.
So
that's who you're talking about. Who couldn't? Yeah. Prince Andrew was just, unrelated. But have you seen the sweat clip of Prince?
Oh, Andrew? I haven't. We're gonna play it.
Okay, because that's just. He's such a bad liar.
Yeah, this is the most atrocious lying I've ever seen, guys. So, Prince Andrew, he's the favorite son of the Queen of England. At the time, he met Ghislaine at Oxford. I just have it right here written in my notes. Post a link where Andrew attempts to defend himself. He was charged with 3 separate accounts of sexual assault against Virginia Giuffre when she was 17. One in London, one in New York, and one on the island. He flew 4 times with Epstein. I'm going to show this first clip where he tries to defend himself against even knowing if he even knew Virginia Giuffre. And Virginia Giuffre, once again, we'll give her story in a minute or two, but her there's this very famous picture. If you know anything about Epstein, it's a picture of Prince Andrew, his arm around Virginia Giuffre, and Ghislaine's right behind him, and this is him trying to defend this. It's laughable. It's just laughable that this is even.
She went on to have and abusing dozens of underage girls. One of Epstein's accusers, Virginia Roberts, has made allegations against you. She says she met you in 2001. She says she dined with you, danced with you at Tramp nightclub in London. She went on to have sex with you in a house in Belgravia belonging to ghislainemaxwell, your friend. Your response?
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady. None whatsoever.
You don't remember meeting her?
No.
She says she met you in 2001. She dined with you. She danced with you.
That would track because her thing with Epstein, her timeline was 2000 to 2002.
In London. And she went on to have sex with you in a house in Belgravia belonging to Ghislainemaxwell.
Once again, I'm sorry to keep bringing this up. Even, say if nothing else is true about the sex trafficking, this is obviously true. So how is that not sex trafficking?
Yeah.
Do you remember her?
No. I have no recollection of ever meeting her. I'm convinced that I was never in tramps with her.
That's interesting. This is what I don't understand, though, because it's like, all right, he's denying it clearly, and we're biased. Let's be clear, I guess, that he's, a pedophile, whatever, all that. Apparently, even there's alleged stories that Epstein considered Prince Andrew was disgusting and filthy, but that's why he wanted to.
Yeah. It's frustrating, too, because I feel like out of all the people involved with Epstein, Andrew might have been the most punished because he was disgraced from the royal family. But even still, like...
Why didn't he face actual charges?
Why didn't he trace a trial?
I don't even know.
None of them faced trial. None of the people we have talked about so far has faced trial.
Nobody's faced trial. The only one is Ghislainemaxwell, who went... I remember even Joe's like, yeah, she was sex trafficked to no one. Or like she was why is she in jail then? Like free Ghislainemaxwell because she wasn't sex trafficking anyone. This is just one other thing really quickly where this is the link, Dan, about he randomly during this interview, which like I said, if you want to watch this was from the BBC. You can just look it on YouTube and find it super easily. This is a link of him like randomly.
This is one of the best lies ever told in an interview because it gets proven false in the same interview.
Yeah.
There's a slight problem with sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at
Wasn't
the time.
he sweating in this interview?
He's sweating later in the interview, which is why
I didn't sweat at the time.
he's like, I didn't sweat at the time, but I fixed it. I sweat now.
Suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at. And
oh, he's a hero.
He's a Falklands War hero.
Out of here, dude. Get the fuck here, bro. Excuse my French, guys. So, yeah, I just like this is why like conspiracy theories and tinfoil hat people like they're if they say one thing that's right, like whatever they say is gospel, right? And so Whitney Webb, once again from her book One Nation Under Blackmail, she alleged that British intelligence was actually trying to protect Prince Andrew through a lot of this. This is kind of just more of a thing on the side, but former royal protection officers revealed Andrew allowed private guests, including young women, into Buckingham Palace after hours without proper security checks. A major breach. They're monitoring Yang Tongbo, a Chinese businessman and confidant of Andrew, viewing him as a potential ascent for political interference. Yeah, this is other corruption through him. MI6 was reportedly concerned about Andrew being blackmailed due to his Epstein links. Really? Because I thought there was no blackmail ring. But MI6 is concerned about it.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous.
And once again, Whitney Webb really makes this case known that he was one of the main guys that suffered from blackmail. And good on him to being suffered. So. Bill Clinton. So he is the first. He's the first president that we're going to be talking about. So he met Jeffrey Epstein through Ghislaine around 1993. This is during his presidency, actually. It might have been even before now that I think about it. But due to released flight logs, Clinton flew with Epstein 28 times. That's like the most, dude.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, this is quoting Bill Clinton directly, Jeffrey is both a highly successful financier and a committed philanthropist with a keen sense of global markets and an in-depth knowledge of 21st century science. We talked about earlier about how Epstein wanted to be known as an intellect.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of the ways how we got into Clinton. This is also, once again, a straight-up fact. Epstein visited the White House from 1993 to 1995. 3 of these flights, the Secret Service was not present with Clinton. How is that even possible?
That's insane.
Once again, we're finding this out these are even through a couple of recent Epstein logs. So you brought this up earlier, Dan. So does the fact on flying on Epstein's plane mean he's guilty?
No, that doesn't necessarily mean he's guilty, but we do have pictures of him on the island. We have pictures of him in the pool. We have eyewitness accounts of people who saw him on the island, and
right,
yeah,
and so this is what I wanted to bring up. Also,
we just know that he's a sex creep because of well, kind of always known that.
There's Juanita Broderick, right, in the 70s, and there was Paula Jones as well. And part of these assaults, like I think it was Juanita Broderick, was like as he went on made a move onto me, he like literally bit her lip. So it just shows like the vicious, side of sexual assault. This I think this just blows this out of the water, Dan. Like this is just, how is this not sex trafficking? Like I get that he's a U.S. president, so he's untouchable, but this is Shantae Davies. She was one of the people that alleged like Kevin Spacey. She was on the flight with Kevin Spacey and Clinton and Chris Tucker. So that flight was probably she's one of the traffic victims. Look at this, and then look at this picture, dude. This is, I'm like, I know I'm sounding like a broken, like, how old does she look in this picture, bro?
Yeah,
she looks like she's not even barely in high school.
Yeah.
And that's in an airport or whatever. But I'm just like, this is when people, and we'll talk about this as we go on, but like, if you're trying to think, we want to be people that are known as like, I want to be able to think critically and not just, read and ingest whatever's shown to me. And it's just, it's insane, man. Like, I don't know how you're supposed to defend any of this. And of course, like, Clinton, they never broke up or whatever, but like, it's well known that Clinton, even if he wasn't a pedophile, he was, a sex addict and whatever. And I think this proves that Bill Clinton was absolutely a pedophile.
Yeah.
Jean-Luc Brunel, he was another French model scout for young minors. He flew with Epstein 25 times, which was even less than Bill Clinton. So that also goes to show you, like, this guy Jean-Luc Brunel, man, he was he was like basically like essentially like, remember we were talking about Epstein and Victoria's Secret and everything. He actually like assaulted all these. Like, it's very possible that Epstein did that as well, or he pulled people from that market and then used them to his own devices. Or brought them to his own devices. But this guy, Jean-Luc Brunel, was a dude who hung himself in prison whilst waiting to go on trial for raping children in February 2022. He visited Epstein 70 times when he was in prison. Jean-Luc Brunel. Who also died by hanging.
Yeah, a lot of parallels there.
There are endless other contacts that, Epstein had, but there's, Michael Jackson, there's the Pope, Mohammed bin Salman from Saudi Arabia, Mick Jagger, Richard Branson, Elon Musk, Glenn Dubin, another billionaire, Jeff Staley of JP Morgan, the Sergey something, and the other guy from Google.
Yeah,
the heads
founders.
of Google. Yeah. Here's another, and just to give, once again, guys, really quickly, just more visual confirmations or context to like what we were seeing. Like this is from the DOJ. House Democrats release. I saved this post. It's on Instagram. House Democrats release new Epstein photos showing high-profile figures. So this is Epstein, Bill, Ghislaine. Is this Hillary on the left? That might be, right? It probably is.
I don't know, yeah.
This is one of the things, too, and like I said, we're going to get to Trump in part 2. And I'm like, why are all their faces blacked out of these 5 women around Trump? Well, we'll have to talk about Trump in part 2 because there's so much there. Once again, Bill Gates with Epstein's pilot. Ugh. Epstein in a bath. Jeez. Massage therapy stuff. We will talk about this bastard. Sorry, there goes my biases. I'm no longer unbiased anymore about Epstein, Dan. This is
It's hard to remain unbiased about something this vile.
This is Ehud Barak, a former Israeli prime minister and like head of intelligence. This is Prince Andrew, Bill Gates. I think that's Dershowitz at the bottom.
Dershowitz.
Right? I don't know who these guys are.
I don't know.
This is Steve Bannon, actually, under here. That's one of Trump's like biggest, supporters. He wants Trump to get a third term. Lovely close of Epstein. I think this is once again Steve Bannon as well. Claims he didn't know Epstein well. Trump can make Halloween great again. And this is actually a famous Hollywood director.
That's Woody Allen.
Oh, right. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm like, who is this guy? So, once again, guys,
Woody Allen is a well-known pedophile for...
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't really know a lot about Woody Allen. What are his famous movies?
What did he make? I haven't seen many of his movies just because it's hard to get into them after already knowing everything I know about him.
Yeah.
So I just never really went down. He made Annie Hall, Midnight in Paris.
Wow.
Yeah. Ants.
Okay, but yeah, I mean everyone knows of Woody Allen.
Yeah.
This is about Epstein. This is from the Dalton School. Yeah, this is David Bank. About how about how it's not what you know, it's who you come in contact with. From the beast itself, man.
Hard work. And hard work didn't translate into success either. It wasn't what you knew or how hard you worked. In fact, the people who were doing construction on Telegraph Avenue at that time I remember seeing some people who were really, coming in 7 o'clock in the morning, spending 12 hours working, and they still were neither happy nor successful. So it was not what you know, who you knew, but who you came in contact with.
That's from the beast itself. Like, what? Like, how is that not in reference to his network?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we'll watch the clip later, but the claim that he worked alone is just so obviously false.
Yeah.
There's so much evidence against it that it's insulting.
It's literally insulting.
The government would even try and pull off that lie.
All right, man. Now going down to the the victims, the women. We've referenced Virginia Giuffre a couple times. She met Epstein through Trump in 2000 when she was 16, working at a spa at Mar-a-Lago. She's recruited by Ghislaine to be a nurse. Like, Ghislaine comes up to her. If anyone wants to know the actual stories, you can once again read Virginia Giuffre's book, Nobody's Girl, which is just her story is just so tragic, man. It's really interesting because Virginia Giuffre, just from her perspective, she claims that Trump had nothing to do with any of the illicit activity, which is very interesting. Like, Trump always treated her with respect. A lot of things, though, Trump he felt like Epstein would recruit people away from his, from Mar-a-Lago and take him to, his own whatever properties he wanted to do. In 2014, through a court filing, Virginia Giuffre claims Dershowitz once again assaulted her when she was 16 over several of the Epstein properties. She also alleged that there was a prime minister that assaulted her, and Prince Andrew, of course. Alan Dershowitz countersues in response, and one of Alan Dershowitz, just going back to this lovely man of God right here, was saying he did get massages, but he kept his underwear on when he got a massage. Here we go. Here's Dershowitz.
Dershowitz is a longtime friend of Epstein's who represented him in the criminal underage sex case. Could you please?
I never saw a young underage woman.
Yet Epstein's former butler swore under oath that Dershowitz was at Epstein's residences.
Yeah.
At the same time, underage girls were there.
Were there young women in another part of the house giving massages when I wasn't around? I have no idea of that.
Dershowitz did say he once received a massage at Epstein's mansion, but from an adult woman.
I kept my underwear on during the massage. I don't like massages particularly.
Bob Norman, Local 10.
Come on, dude.
Yeah.
Even if you're not, so maybe, I don't know, maybe it's possible that Dershowitz didn't do this stuff, but it's like, I guess when you're part of the DOJ, part of the FBI, part of these people that are investigating, you have to be super objective and you have to take your emotions out of it. That's one thing when really covering all this stuff, I was like, I have to really not be emotional about this. I'm not really doing a good job now that we're live on air. But it's just like, why would we give people the benefit of the doubt? And this is I had this written down later on when we're talking about these other victims, dude. But it's like, when are we gonna believe victims?
Right, especially since we know.
I'm sorry to laugh. It's just
yeah, we have so many testimonies, and like I was saying earlier, so many things have been confirmed from just future developments and future releases that kind of suggest that they aren't just making this up. There's obviously new, and we're there. So, I don't know. It's just Alan Dershowitz has enough influence that he can show up on the news whenever he wants to give his own side of the story. He's on Fox News all the time. It's like, why? Why do you let this guy?
Screw Fox News, man.
Yeah, it's Fox News, but even for them, that's low.
I know, right? That was good, Dan. That was funny. So at 17, she's trafficked to Prince Andrew. Right. Once again, we talked about Zorro Ranch. Part of the blackmail for her about being trafficked to Prince Andrew is in Virginia Giuffre herself has said that Ghislaine told her, "We know where your school is."
Yeah, that's just disturbing.
in the memoir, like Virginia Giuffre revealed that she was abused by her father beforehand. And she actually brought this up to Ghislaine, like when Ghislaine first ran into her and was like, "Hey, I know you're reading a massage book. Would you ever be interested in Jeffrey?" Like, and then she brings up the whole philanthropist. How I was like, "Oh, well, he'll come if you like give him massages, like he'll help you with your schooling and whatever." And it was, man, it was just heartbreaking. In the Surviving Jeffrey Epstein series, Virginia Giuffre talked about like this survival part of her brain that would turn on, and I know I'm not doing it justice because I've just never experienced anything close to that. But she was talking about having the survival part of her brain that would turn on when the abuse would happen, because in her mind at the time, it was the lesser of two evils, her getting abused, because there was a promise of her getting education, and it's just heartbreaking. It's just. It's hard to describe the sorrow and stuff. And this is when you're reading this like on a Tuesday night after work. You're like, God dang it, man! Like, holy cow!
Yeah, and that's just a continuation of the whole thing of picking on the most vulnerable people. It's awful, but it's on purpose because
exactly
they're going to be the easiest to manipulate.
Absolutely, man. And so at 19, Epstein and Ghislaine heavily suggested that Virginia birth their child, actually. And they were going to give her $200K a month. And this tracks with the eugenics stuff that was happening at Zorro Ranch, Virginia eventually escaped because it was getting so bad with, she was starting to like fight with Ghislaine and Epstein. And so Ghislaine's like, I'll do you a compromise. I'll have you go to Thailand so you can learn, because she never got her license, like Virginia Giuffre, like she was just being trafficked. And Ghislaine said, fine, we're going to have you go do it. You're going to go to Thailand, and you're going to bring a Thai girl back home to Jeffrey. And once she got to Thailand, she, basically fled to Australia and said, I'm not coming back. And then, I forgot, like Jeffrey Epstein sent this like weird, like text to her in response, but so interesting, and then we go down to the farmers. We know a lot of the farmer story more through like the Jeffrey Epstein Filthy Rich through the Netflix documentary. This is once again where they a big part of this, like this, and they were part of the more of the. They started once again in Florida as well, so they experienced all this stuff going through. Hey, like Jeff wants to $200 for a massage. And then they would go, and then they would get, and it's this whole, like, I wish I could do it, but I'm not a psychologist, but it's the psychological, like, weight that he had, like, as an older man, like, over these young women. So they would, like, keep coming back in a way.
Yeah.
And, like, hey, recruit some of your other friends, and we'll pay you more. And
he had Ghislaine, who we're going to talk about more in part 2, but she also kind of had the role of being a comforting figure. You kind of already touched on it with Guffrey, who talked
right,
who Ghislaine kind of put her at ease, kind of encouraged her, like, oh no, you can meet this guy, he's chill, we're both women, we can, I understand what's happened to you, and she kind of had like a protective role, or at least she put on that facade at first.
Absolutely,
even though she
man.
was as depraved as Jeffrey, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And once again, Ghislaine was a woman, so like she came as very, Ghislaine was like, very charming, super like big socialite, like a very sexy, fun-loving person. Like, we'll learn these accounts from other people, but it was well documented that's how she was.
You were showing the abuse statistics before, and one of them was that 93% of all abusers are men. So that's good to keep in mind, but also I think she went under the radar a lot because of that.
Absolutely. And once again, with the farmers, like they originally report these abuses in 96. Then they, FBI and like, in the, the police reject, they say whatever, like they basically just tell them to F off essentially. Then they both talked to reporters in 2002, but it went nowhere. Then they talked to the FBI again in 2006. Once again, when March 2005, it starts get the ball rolling. And, you know, grooming was a very big part of their story. Once again, they were involved from 94 to 97. So once again, people think like it really, so they were actually even before Virginia Giuffre, now that you look at the timelines. And so an incredible part of the farmer story is that they were talking about it for so long, and they were really able to, you know, once again, just somehow find the strength each year, each month, each week, each day to just, you know, to start to, yeah, it's just, I don't know how you have the strength to do that. I think about my own mental hurdles sometimes. And then when it comes to sexual abuse, like, it's just insane. And once again, these two farmer girls, like, they were promised careers, and they were promised, you know, all these things, and they just got easily fell into his web. Because it's like, dude, you're 16, like, you don't even really have a brain about you till like 22, 23, 24, 25. Like, yeah. There's no, and that's the thing, like, people would mention, well, why couldn't they run away? Why couldn't they do this? They couldn't. They're kids, dude. What are you talking about?
Yeah. It's economic pressure, it's social pressure, all sorts of stuff. You know, Epstein was a master manipulator. Yeah. He was like manipulating people on Wall Street. So yeah, what chance do you have if you're a 16-year-old?
Great point, man. Great point. You know, there was Sarah Ranscom. She was, you know, recruited at the age of 22 because she moved to New York in 2006. She's once again promised financial help because she had interest in the Fashion Institute of Technology, which was an elite design school. She went to Epstein's Island on a false narrative of a girl's vacation, and her abuse went on for 9 months, where every day she was getting, like, you know, attacked. You know, yeah, for lack of a better word. She was viciously threatened into silence. I thought this was heartbreaking. This is her reaction towards Ghislaine, Dan. I think you'll find this.
I wasn't worth anything. And I'm sad that she'll never see the beach or the sea again.
This is Sarah Ranscom talking about Ghislaine.
And it's something I'll never be able to understand. I'm sorry.
So we don't have to go through the whole video. If it's just it's a lot, like, emotionally heavy. But she was speaking actually about how Ghislaine's never gonna be able to see, like, the beach again or all these other things, which almost goes to show, like, I think with this woman, Sarah Ranscom, like, part of her story as well was that she brought up big names that weren't at the time involved, like this billionaire who we met, Richard Branson, Clinton. There was someone else, I forgot. I had it written down. But it's weird that, like, why would Sarah Ranscom, like, why would she be, like, almost empathetic towards Ghislaine? I think because, like, Sarah Ranscom now is at the place where it's like there was so much destruction and vicious.
Yeah, it might have just
I'm running out of words, bro.
It's like a Stockholm syndrome kind of thing, maybe, where, like, she probably was in contact with so many awful people that even though Ghislaine Maxwell was holding her against her will, she was just nice enough to her that she developed, like, oh, this person is making me feel safe or whatever, even if she's manipulating her. And
right,
even understanding that, you know, the emotional impact of that kind of sticks with you.
Yeah, and once again, like, Sarah Ranscom, like, she did mention once again Prince Andrew, Richard Branson, and Clinton. She actually was never trafficked to any of those people, but it was interesting because they were still like heavily involved, at least you know, Clinton and Prince Andrew. And this girl Sarah Ranscom was one of the first people that got the ball rolling about how Ghislaine's the chief orchestrator, how she's the engineer of it all, like how there are hundreds of girls, you know. Once again, there's other stories about this girl, Liz Steiner. She meets Ghislaine at a department store, offers to carry her bags because she's this lovely British, like, woman, like, that's very, like, has a lot of, like, what's the word? Pose to her, you know. And then there was Courtney Wild, Jennifer Arrows, and Marina Lacerda. And especially for Courtney Wild, we mentioned her a couple times. But basically, she was recruited at 14. And at the time, like, you know, Dershowitz and other attorneys come after her, claiming that she was a prostitute when she makes these claims, Dershowitz is like, hey, check her MySpace page. She dresses like a hoe. And, even the feds actually showed up on her door one day. They even actually showed up at her job. They were very aggressive when questioning her. At one point, she came home and the FBI had dropped a folder of all the victim reports of the girls Courtney Wild knew. Meaning that Courtney Wild was one of the kids that hey, she brought all her friends to, because she's 14, she doesn't know any of that stuff. And this is one of the parts where I'm like, this is part of this thing where with the FBI regarding the sweetheart deal, that's intimidation from the FBI, or some rogue parts of the FBI. Dude, so then there was this woman, Sarah Kellen. She was known as Epstein's lieutenant, figuratively. And she was, there was her and 3 other women, Adriana Ross, Leslie Groff, and Nadia Marcinkova, all got off. They were listed as co-conspirators, basically mini Ghislaines underneath. We talked about Epstein and his, basically these are the people that would take nude photography, or they would set up appointments. They would run the places where you would get all the massages. And it's heavy stuff, man. But there was 4 women that were underneath Ghislaine that did the exact same thing that got off. And even this woman, Sarah Kellen, a lot of these women we just listed, said, hey, this woman, Sarah Kellen, is very much part of the logistics department of all this stuff, if there even was such a thing. And, but this woman, Sarah Kellen's oh, I met him at 18. I'm a victim as well. This woman's an interior designer today, married a NASCAR driver. It's just insane. And, Sarah Ranscom in that same interview talks about how bringing up all these things is being reaped by the system.
Yeah, it's a thing, I think, why a lot of times people who are sexually assaulted don't want to go to trial, just because you have the private kind of humiliation, and then you have to go out in public, and there are witnesses, and there are going to be people who are trying to intimidate you, and there are going to be people who are lying about you and saying the stuff Dershowitz was saying about how you're a prostitute and you actually, it's your fault, all the victim blaming. Right. And it's you're
kidding me?
So it's sad to think how many other victims we probably just will never hear from, because they've already been so broken by Epstein that they just can't put that kind of public pressure on themselves. But that just goes to show how brave a lot of these other women are. Virginia Guffrey, Courtney Wild.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And so, going back to the Epstein timeline, November 2018, investigative reports by the Miami Herald highlighted the lenient 2008 plea deal and the involvement of the then Labor Secretary Alex Acosta. And he's the one who's he ordered the sweetheart deal, On July 6, 2019, Epstein was arrested in New York on the federal sex trafficking charges, and Acosta resigned after that. With Alex Acosta, he was the Secretary of Labor under Trump. He was an attorney out of Florida. In Surviving Jeffrey Epstein on Prime, they mention how Acosta's job as Secretary of Labor is to cover and to monitor acts of human trafficking in America. Yeah. So it's a blatant disregard of power and or abuse of power on his side, and I think what's important to bring up is that it's known that he was the guy that said Epstein belonged to intelligence and to back off, and then he later rescinded his statements. And this has been part of the whole narrative of, hey, Epstein was intelligence. What are we talking about? His reason why he would have said that, which he doesn't agree with, if he retracted his statements, he tried to reiterate them in a different way. It was all BS, but in my humble opinion, he essentially communicated that it was the best option, that it would be hey, if we can get him, it might be an all or nothing trial on this one, so let's just try to get him on something. And it's maybe Alex Acosta understood the corruption of the system at that point. I mean, it's been corrupt for a long time.
Yeah.
But you know, once again, there is a difference between like being a rapist and being just like a sexual pervert, like, but one's not a crime. Well, people would disagree about some things, and that's found out right here, Dan. We'll get to this last part of Epstein's death, and we'll wrap up part 1. But you know, Alex Acosta, he never reviewed any of the victim statements. So here's an interview.
There were at least 40 minors who gave sworn statements to the FBI as part of the investigation before a decision was made in this case that they had been raped, abused, and trafficked. Over 40 minors. And the line prosecutor in this case wrote an 82-page memo to the leadership in the U.S. Attorney's Office recommending a prosecution. And she was so convinced, based on the evidence and interviews that she had taken and reviewed, that she drafted a 53-page indictment in this case. And what Mr. Acosta just told us is that based on his assessment of the case with his team, that he did not see sufficient evidence to move forward with prosecuting the case, that there were weaknesses in the case. When asked if he made the decision as to whether or not to fully prosecute this case, he took responsibility for it. He said it was the decision of him and his team. But when asked if he had directly reviewed the evidence itself in this case, he said that he had not actually read the statements of the victims.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, I don't know if that's a lie or the truth, but either way, that's pretty shocking.
August 10th, 2019, Epstein's found dead in his New York jail cell. His death was ruled a suicide. So just to back up really quickly about, you know, his final days, we'll talk about the autopsy really quick before we wrap up this episode. If you made it this far, guys, shout out to you. You're pretty down the rabbit hole with us. So, you know, Epstein, on July 23rd, he's placed on suicide watch, and he's actually found semi-conscious with they couldn't figure out if he had a suicide attempt or not, but he was unconscious in a cell. In July 29th, like 6 days later, or a week later, he's moved off suicide watch and he's transferred over to psych eval. The day after, to August 8th, he is moved to a special housing unit and is assigned to a cellmate. This guy, Nicholas Tartaglione, which what an Italian name.
Yeah.
He was with him during his first apparently suicide attempt. Like, he was originally his cellmate, and then they moved him off him and they moved him back. And this guy, Tartaglione, was known as a dirty cop for a quadruple homicide. Essentially, he went and he killed a guy over a drug deal, and 3 people saw it happen, and he killed them. Wow. And this guy was huge, man. He was I'll throw a picture in post-production, but this huge jacked cop that looked like he was John Cena or whatever. And even when he killed the first guy, Martin Luma, he was beat and tortured this guy for an hour. So it's just what a crazy world this is. And he killed this guy by a zip tie, which is, look, I'm not saying he killed Epstein or whatever, but, you know, August 9th, Epstein asked Tartaglione to be moved from his cell, which actually violated the prison protocol, because you couldn't, but regardless, somehow Epstein got around it, and he was no longer in suicide watch. So the next day, Epstein's found dead at 6:30 a.m., hung from the top bunk. You know, and this is where it just gets crazy, man. So obviously we hear the stories where it's the guards fell asleep, there was no camera footage. But what's even crazier is,
if you want to go into the camera footage, they did release what they said was footage of Epstein's door. It wasn't actually. It's the place Epstein was staying was behind the door, down a hallway.
Really?
And, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And there was a stairwell that gave access to the area. So really, the video doesn't prove anything, and we don't have footage of his cell because
There's
that
just-
was one of the 7 of 9 cameras that went down that night before.
Yeah, and there was 2 minutes and 53 seconds missing.
Yes, and there was stuff in the, so like when you edit a video, you know, like the metadata.
Yeah, explain that real quick.
Yeah, so a lot of times there'll be like the video file itself will have also obviously all the information about how to decode the video and the audio, but it'll also have other information like when the video clips are from, like dates that are attached when they're filmed, and like it'll have remnants where you can tell how it was edited, and through that they were able to determine that yes, there were multiple minutes missing from the tape, which was claimed by the DOJ to be a continuous tape.
Yeah, and that's a straight up lie.
That is a lie, yeah.
And what I didn't get this, this is one another thing. Well, I guess people could maybe explain this away, but so the guards falsified their logs too. Like they said they checked in with them. I don't know if that's a big thing or not. These people, it was Tova, their names were Tova Noel and Michael Thomas. But I'm like, oh well, they just fell asleep or they did this. But like you falsifying logs too is like that seems like you're covering it up.
Yeah. It could just be that they were very lazy for a while, and then suddenly it mattered. But
right,
it's hard to say.
Right.
There haven't really been very many interviews with the guards or anything.
No, I haven't seen anything at all, which you never know. But the chief medical examiner also found fractures in Epstein's hyoid bone, and so once again, I am not. To be clear, I'm not an expert or any of these things. This is from what's being reported. So, homicidal strangulation, like often, the hyoid bone is oftentimes broken during homicidal strangulation, which happens in prisons. And so this happens 25% in the times of hanging and 35% with strangulation. So, is there let's try to find an argument like, okay, say Epstein did kill himself, right? I really don't think he did. Is it possible? I suppose so.
I think it's possible maybe that he did kill himself and, you know, the jail turned a blind eye. You know, maybe they gave him the rope, so to say.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering like this, because it's interesting because Epstein was meeting with his lawyers like up until that point. He did, like said, arguably, I think he did have a suicide attempt, which you could be, oh, A plus B equals C. But then also, like, why was he still meeting with his lawyers? Because, like, he seemed like a guy that would be like, I won't let the system beat me. I own the system. I am the system.
Yeah.
You know?
The only thing I could think of for devil's advocate is if somehow he was convinced that, like, oh, you're going to jail for a long time, like, it's over.
Yeah.
But I feel like he was, like we've talked about before, he was like a narcissist. He, like, thought so highly of himself. He doesn't seem like the type that would kill himself, especially since I can't believe that he wouldn't believe that maybe he could get out early or something like that, considering his connections in the past. And
well, this is Bondi like saying about the 2 minutes and 53 seconds that it's natural, it just happens.
They redo that video. It's old from like 1999. So every
night okay.
The video's reset, and every night should have the same minute missing.
And you can see like someone moving in here. Like I don't know exactly what's going on there, but if he did kill himself, why is there all this information? Like, and here. I think with this Epstein stuff, like, yes, there are people jumping on it. Oh, that this is like a conspiracy and this happened. Like, here's an example where I think there's a lot of like stuff coming out about the Charlie Kirk assassination, and maybe it's just my bias, but I'm like, I think Charlie Kirk got killed by a leftist. I don't think Israel killed him, and I don't think his wife's corrupt or any of this stuff. I think with this Epstein stuff, I'm like, if it's what, like, there shouldn't be all these side details, right? That doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess ultimately, in the end, it could have been any of these people that we've been talking about. Like, the people he talked to were all incredibly rich,
incredibly powerful, and
incredibly motivated to not have personal details come out. So it's like he literally wouldn't hang out with someone who wouldn't be able to do this.
Exactly. So, but dude, this is what I don't understand. Like 2 days before killing himself, Epstein's estate put his $577 million into a trust called the 1953 Trust, which is the year of his birthday. What?
Yeah.
Ghislaine doesn't believe that he killed himself. Ghislaine.
Yeah. She would know.
And dude, once again, would anything be different if he did kill himself? You think?
I don't know. I think it would be important for us to have this whole Epstein files thing anyway. I mean, if he didn't kill himself at all and we could question him, that would be ideal. But if he did kill himself or if he was killed, I guess at the end of the day, that's the end of our access to him for questioning. So,
yeah.
And we'll never know who did it, much like we've talked about other conspiracies on the show. And at the end of the day, it's like, I don't think the Epstein files, if we released all of them, would even reveal who killed him.
Yeah.
But I think it's important anyway, just because of how connected it is to our government.
Yeah, and once again, you bring like Bill Barr in, right, the Attorney General at the time, and his comments like are originally like, oh yeah, this stuff doesn't make sense, and then he goes and says like, oh, I've looked at everything, like I've seen the files, I've seen the tape, like we're good, we'll get to Cash and Bongino later, but I think, man, like it's just very strange and it doesn't make sense, and I think it's possible too that I think like Ehud Barak could have been the person that put a hit on Epstein, which we will reference and get to in part 2.
Yes, that is enough for part 1, probably.
Guys, if you made it to the end, God bless you. Thank you. Please like and subscribe, share this stuff, and we'll see you in part 2. Peace.